everyone, this is Marissa. I am going to show you a little bit about how I use gradient maps in my editing. I will start with this image here, a sweet little girl from a recent session. Let's see, so you can either choose the gradient map section from right here. This is Photoshop CS5. So it might be different in your palette, but you can either choose it by selecting this button here, or down here in the circle, the half black, half white circle gives you a menu here. So I'll just go ahead and dive right in. All right, so gradient maps are a nice way to tone the shadows and highlights of an image. It'll automatically, when you select gradient map, pop up whatever you have over here in your foreground, background color palette. I do not want to use black and white on this one. So to change the colors, just click on the gradient map right here, and right here in the little box where it's black, if you click that, you'll see a box pop up here where you can select a different color. And I wanted to show you how to add rich brown tones to an image. So I've played with this before and I have a color that I like, so I'll just go ahead and type that in. It's a rich, nice rich brown. And what I like to do with the highlights is instead of leaving them white, I try and pick a color that is going to be more skin tone friendly. So sometimes, or usually in the kind of light peach cream area. Go ahead and click OK and OK on that box. And you're not going to see anything change here. This looks like I guess a different style of a monochrome edit. But what using the different blend modes does is give you different ways to apply these colors to your image. So I like to use soft light for more of a contrasty look. It's not going to give you much haze usually. And I like to pull down the opacity. Usually I don't use these above 30%. Sometimes it gives too much contrast that way, and that's just a little much for my tastes, but obviously it's personal preference. So you can see when I toggle the eye button here, it gives it a little bit of a contrast boost and kind of richens the brown tones in the shadows of the image. One of my favorite things to do with gradient maps, though, is to, if you click on this here, the sliders here, you can slide them in and out to tell Photoshop how much of the image you want to be considered a shadow or a highlight. So if I just slide this in here, I'll do it kind of drastic to show you a big difference. You can see how much more rich that becomes in the shadows with the browns. You could do the same with the highlights. I'll bring those in a bit there, and you can see what that does. So I'm going to leave the highlights alone, but I do like what it does by bringing the shadows in with the brown. So I will go ahead and click OK there, and you can see the difference. Now, sometimes it might be too much contrast in the eyes if you wanted to brush that off using a black brush on your white mask here. That would be fine. And I just like that it didn't really mess up the skin tones. It didn't create anything too wonky. And so gradient maps are a favorite tool of mine to tone an image, and especially the shadows. I'm a big fan of toning the shadows in my images. So that is one thing you could do. Another mode that you could do if you wanted to add this as a haze would be screen mode. It's another mode I like to use. It brightens the image and adds a light haze to it. I usually don't use screen mode at a very high opacity, usually between 5 to maybe 10 or 12%, and that just adds a nice subtle haze. And if you were to do it higher and wanted to mask off parts of your image, you could do that obviously as well. So that is on this image. And I brought up a newborn image to show you. This is from a recent session, and a couple of different blend modes, the way I use gradient maps on a newborn image, for example. So I'll pull this up. Again, it defaulted to black and white, which is what I have in my color palette over here. I'm going to go ahead and change that. And again, clicking here for the color box, I'm going to show how I would add a cool haze to this image. So I'll go ahead and type in a color that I know I like. For the shadows, some blue cool shadows, and then for the highlights, kind of a peachy color. And that looks, you're looking at that thinking, wow, that's kind of crazy. But for a haze, I would probably use this one in screen mode, and I would bring that opacity way down to about, usually for screen mode, like I said, I like it about 10%. And you can see how it's a slightly cool haze just over the image, but it doesn't overwhelm it, and it doesn't do crazy things to the baby's skin. You could mask that back a little bit more if you wanted to, or you could go back up here and choose maybe a warmer color, maybe a little bit farther down the line there. You can see the current color and then the new color. It's just a slight change there. And again, you can toggle that on and off to see how that looks. And then if you wanted to add a warm haze, one of the things I like to do is I would pick like a nice rich orange color here. Let's see, one that I use often would be that one for the shadows. And then the highlights, again, I'm going to pick, I don't like to leave it at white. Sometimes I feel like that can make it too bright or even a little bit desaturated. So I would choose something like that. And it's not a big difference, but you'll see what I'm talking about here in a minute. Click OK. And for this one, you can leave it in normal mode, and I would bring the opacity down, try about 10%. And you can see a nice warm haze over the image right there. You can always mask things back in by selecting the layer mask. Or, so that one, you can see a lot of the warmth and a lot of the color that you selected here in the gradient map. If you were to go to screen mode, it wouldn't be quite as warm and it would be a little bit lighter. So you can see the difference between screen mode and the original. Or going back, you could do normal. It's not as bright, but it's a little bit warmer. And just for fun, let's check out what soft light does. It's a lot more of a clean look, warm contrast there without the haze. So those are the ways that I use gradient maps in my editing. I love to use them and use them on almost all my images. I'm not much of a clean editor. I love it in other people's work, but I find that in my own images, when I get to that clean edit, I just can't stop myself. I keep playing, and gradient maps are one of my favorite tools to enhance my images. So I hope this has been helpful, and I hope you're able to use gradient maps yourselves using the different blending modes to enhance your own images. And hope you guys are having a great day. Thank you. Bye.